How are we doing? Good afternoon. Welcome along to Preston for a great afternoon of discussions with very powerful women in music. It always makes my heart sing to be here. I'm Zenner, by the way. I live in Manchester, worked for BBC Introducing in Lancashire a long time ago now, but Sean does a great job supporting artists locally. But there has always been this imbalance in the music industry for those women and those of marginalised gender. And I think these conversations need to be had just more and more to really be able to understand the issues that women are facing, to understand the experiences that we've all had as well. So I am so happy to be joined by an awesome panel of badass women. So you have got so many powerful people in the room. If you are going to stick around, make sure you pick their brains, make sure you make the contacts that you think can help you on your journey. So enough of chatting from me. I am going to get them all to introduce themselves and tell us a bit about what they do in their little world in the music industry. We'll start with Yvonne, and we'll go to the left.
Hello everybody, lovely to see you all here. Okay, my journey, it's been a very interesting one actually, which started when I was 17 at college doing fashion design. And I come from a very musical family background, so music was already ingrained in my life. And as all good students do, go out to see live gigs. And I started going to see this band called The Tutors back in Manchester. Became friends with them, and the lead singer wanted me to design and make him a couple of suits, which I duly did. Carried on going to the gigs, and then one night the sound engineer didn't show up. And they asked me if I'd just sit by this amp and turn that big knob down if there's any nasty noises. So that was my first experience of sound engineering. Anyway, nobody saw their sound engineer after that, and so I've always called myself an inadvertent sound engineer because that's what I became. I became very passionate about it very quickly. We did a show at Contact Theatre. And I came across this 6-channel mixing desk in a corner in a storeroom, and thought that'd look a bit nicer than an amp, because it was literally just 3 vocal mics. But already people had started saying, "God, we can hear what he's thinking for the first time." And I thought, maybe I'm good at this. So anyway, we duly purchased the dusty mixing desk from the Contact Theatre, and it was great because it meant I could have a bass drum mic and a bass mic as well as the 3 vocal mics. So shortly after that they were offered a recording deal with EMI, and we were given £60,000, some for recording, some of which we went and bought a band and a PA. I didn't know, I think back now, I didn't know what a PA really was, how to pick one. I went to this huge warehouse where they had mixing desks all down the middle table and speakers down both ends of the room, and that's how I picked our first PA. We hired a church hall for the week. I learned how to use it myself, and then we were off on the road, and we were a very hard-working band. We did, on average, 300 gigs a year, so it was a great grounding for me. That's how I started. Anyway, fast forward a bit, it's such a long story, but I think how I got into production. I spent many years on the road with Simply Red and Tennessee, loads of bands. But I knew, I came to know that what I really wanted to do was to produce, to be a producer. I thought, why am I doing all these gigs? It's really hard work doing live sound, because we're working in venues that aren't designed for getting a good sound. It just beats me how some people own venues in some of these places. It really does. I cottoned on very quickly that actually in a studio you've got the perfect, acoustic space to get a great sound all the time instead of it being a lottery. So I did some production work with Simply Red. Nick and I co-produced a few things. and I knew this is what I really wanted to do. And but because it was so difficult to get your foot in the door as a producer in those days, it was a real boys' club back then. And even though Simply Red's manager pushed for me to produce their first album, they weren't having it. They just looked at him aghast, you know, at the thought of giving all this money to a female who hadn't anything, you know, nothing to my name at that point as far as production went. So anyway, I decided in the end to come off the road, build myself a studio, because now computers have been born, because, you know, this is talking mid-80s here. And basically just hook up with artists and singers who wanted their work recording, and that's where I started really, and I've never looked back. And sometimes I just sit in my house and I think music business has been really good to me. You know, I've got a beautiful house. I've worked with some amazing artists, either well known or I particularly like encouraging musicians to record. Every musician has an unrecorded album in them, so that's what I particularly enjoy doing. So that's how I got into production, engineering and producing. I think there's a lot of misconception about what a producer actually is. I really do. I think there needs to be some better lines defined, you know. But I just call myself a proactive producer. Engineering was my first love. It's very, very valuable skill to have if you want to produce, especially where live musicians were involved. Anyway, I'll stop now. I've gone on far too long already.
That's right.
Hi everyone, my name is McGann, and I'm an independent alternative pop artist. I'm based in Coventry. It's kind of been a long journey for me too. I studied music at Coventry University over a decade now. I feel very old at this point. But my kind of ethos in terms of my approach to my own career has always been, I've tried to kind of forge a path of my own to stand out from the noise. So I've tried to adopt non-traditional approaches to kind of bolt on different avenues where, you know, I could monetize my music outside of Spotify and the usual places, right? So back in 2014, I stumbled across live streaming for the very first time, so over 8 years ago now, and I became the first UK app to start making a living through that format. It's kind of like a YouTuber, but through the format of live streaming. And back then, live streaming wasn't integrated into every social platform we use today. It existed on a website called Livestream. It existed on a website called YouNow, which is where I kind of cut my teeth in the live streaming game. And it's very much a direct-to-fan approach. So what I've always kind of prided myself in over the years as an independent act is really harnessing the community that you can build online around your music, and kind of valuing that to the point of including your audience in different steps of your music and what you do. So I'm very much a content creator and a musician. I'd say maybe 12 years ago, those two worlds were very separate, but now they are very much overlapped, and most musicians in the room, we are all content creators now. So it's been an interesting overlap over my kind of career. The music I produce is alternative pop. The live show is very much usually me and an acoustic guitar. That's how my songs are kind of born. I've had some success over the years through, again, fan-driven projects through Kickstarter, through an album I released in 2017. Through the live streaming lens of things, I've given a TEDx talk on live streaming my life as an artist and what that kind of looks like. And I still do that now on platforms like Twitch. And I'm also a kind of mentor to musicians through different avenues, through UK Music, so Musicians Union, Schoolground Sounds, to try and open up a line of communication with artists that are unsure of, you know, particularly how to host themselves online, and those alternative ways you can support yourself as an artist through director, founder of Patreon, live streaming, etc. I am working with Virgin Music UK on a new EP this year called The Monsterverse, where I'm kind of using virtual production as a tool to build immersive worlds where the audience can step into the world of song. So having a lot of creative fun with that this year. But that's me, and I'd love to chat to you guys later about everything. So yeah, I'll pass them on.
All right, my name's Kyla Brox. I have a story like everybody else does that's on this panel today. I hail from Wigan, which is the town of the verve and northern soul. There's been great acts coming in out there, but my music journey started with being an absolute idiot at school, kind of mimicking people and not realising that I had a voice that I could use and do that. And I wasn't great at school, I wasn't what they call academic, but I was a great singer, and I got a lot of great breaks as a young person that got me into like shows and music theatre. But I was a total idiot where I'd lose gigs because I would go in the pub and things like that in between. And I had a very charmed existence as a young person, but encountered a lot of misogyny and a lot of hard learning curves is the nicest way to put it. And I got a bit bored for a while with performing, and I thought, I don't know, I really want to keep doing this for a long period of time, but it was told to me at the time, you won't be able to get a gig or a work when you're over 24 because that's it, you passed it, you've had it, it's over, your career's on, go work in the co-op, and things like this. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to think about going to uni. So I auditioned for loads of unis and I got accepted, and I went to Salford. And I learned all the skills because in addition to all that kind of music performance stuff, I had all this creative stuff going on as well, which was, I could hear songs in my head. I loved orchestration, but I didn't know how to do that. I was great at being in bands, but I wanted to be a female MD and a band leader. I wanted to lead my own ensembles, and that's what my music education gave me. And now I operate in between two worlds. The first world that I do is the education world, where I'm a higher education lecturer for the BIM Institute, but also I'm a freelance vocal tutor as well, so I do private tuition and I have my own successful practice with that. And then I have my creative side, which I also really love, which involves everything from blogging to mentoring signed artists and young artists that are coming up, to doing top lines for different record labels. Some of that has been a nice learning curve as well. But I feel very, very lucky to still be working as a woman in her 40s, perimenopausal, and I went through lockdown caring for my mum as well, who had vascular dementia, which was a massive journey and learning curve. But I used all my music skill and my creativity to kind of help communicate with that. So I'm on Instagram and check out my blog because I'm trying to get it published. I'll pass it on to Kirsty.
Hi everyone, so my name is Kirsty Almeida. I'm a singer. I'm really nervous. I could feel that as it was coming down each one of the hearts and it feels easier to sing to you than to speak to you. I can feel that singing is easier. So I'm a singer, a professional songwriter. I'm a mother of an 8-year-old. I'm a creative producer. I have synesthesia, so I very often go into spaces and go off into humming land because what I see is what I hear, and what I hear is what I see, and sometimes I can smell a perfume and it makes melodies happen in my head. Sometimes I hear a melody and I can smell a perfume and I want to make the perfume. So that's so finally I understand that about myself, which is a good thing, because for a long time that was a very confusing world. I have, as a woman, have very often been the first woman to do something. ceremony kind of past, I've always been the first woman to ever be chosen to sing on a particular stage, or the first woman to sing for Gibraltar's National Day, or the first woman to make an album with such and such, or the first woman to. But as part of that, I've had to break down many barriers. I also come from a hard school of knocks, so there was all sorts of abuse in my childhood that it's taken a long time to get over, but I'm still getting over. But that's become a really important conversation, because I think that is also a part of the conversation that we're trying to have right now, which is how do we support women in the industry, and how do we support women to not have an old story, and how do we support women to be professional despite old stories, and how do we look at those stories and decide how we're going to make new stories. So that's kind of part of my job, part of my blog, part of my work, part of what I do. I'm a lecturer. I lecture 600 students every week, and my job within that is always about empowerment. It's always about resilience. It's always about how do we take what we have and turn what we have into a brand new story that is a really important story because it's our story. I try as often as I can to help students to understand that we are the music industry. There isn't a music industry outside of us. This is it. This, exactly what we're doing right now, and exactly every woman who's in here. This is the music industry. It's not outside of us. So that's I make sure that that is my mission, to help us to realize that every word that we say, everything that we do makes a difference to the music, our music industry. It's no one else's music industry. And that's that.
Hi everyone, I'm Kyla Brox. I'm a singer, I'm a blues singer. Completely independent artist. I've been doing it for many years. I grew up in a very musical family. My mum and dad are both musicians. I started singing in my dad's band when I was about 12 years old, so I feel like I learned the ropes on the stage, most definitely. I also did study classically as well, so I had both sides of it. I had the blues side, where I would go and be on stage at the Band on the Wall, age 13, whatever, and then the next day I'd be in school playing flute classically, or singing in the school choir. So I feel like I had quite a rounded education in that way. I also studied voice classically. I had lessons at the Royal Northern College of Music, and that was when I was quite a young teenager. So I had this sort of path. I could either go down one way, which was classical, singing opera, and pursuing my studies with my flute, or I could chuck it all away, leave school at 16, and go on tour with my dad, which is what I did. And I've never looked back really, so I make my music basically by performing live. I've recorded and released and written, I don't even know how many albums it is now, but so it probably is about 12 to be honest. But they were all self-produced, although I sometimes get my brother to help me. He's Sam Brox, he's an incredible musician and producer who used to work with Yvonne, actually. We're all connected in many ways. But yeah, the basic way that I make my living is from touring and performing live, which I think is possibly quite different from most of the other women on the panel. So I have to sort of juggle the fact that I'm also a mum, which is wonderful but very difficult when you're a touring musician. It's quite good when they're tiny because they can come with you. And I was lucky that my mum retired at about the same time as I had my first daughter, so she came on tour with us. I don't know how my husband felt about that because he's in the band as well, so he had not only his child, his wife, but also his mother-in-law with him on the tours. But what I found is that the blues world that I'm in, the live music world that I'm in, is very much a male-dominated area. And certainly when I first began performing, when I finally had my own band when I was about 21 and had sort of left my dad's band, I would often be the only woman on the bill for a festival. Or we'd have like maybe an afternoon which was billed as Women in Blues, you know, and yeah. But what I've noticed over the years of my career is that is changing, and there are so many more, not just singers but also musicians coming through, female singers and female musicians, and I just hope that we can create more of that. My daughter's nearly 13 now, she's playing guitar, and I just want her to have some good role models.
So powerful. Can someone down that end release that microphone from its shackles and give us a bit more of a chance to interact? I think you can all understand that we've had all completely different journeys, haven't we? But there's some key themes that are like leaping out at me. I mean, just for like listening to the stories of like Claire and Kirsty there. Like for instance, I'm a radio presenter. I got started in radio as a side hustle on community radio. It took me probably over a decade to turn it into a full-time job in the music industry and working in radio. But I also do a plethora of things. Lecturing, voiceover, all these different things. I know the difficulties of building a home studio. I moved house to make sure I had a small enough room because there was too much sound reflection. So I totally hear all these things, all these issues that we're facing, even if it's not childcare, it's dog care, from my personal perspective anyway. You know, she couldn't come with me today, it would have been too noisy. But there are so many key themes and barriers that are facing women at the moment. I just want to, I won't talk too much, I promise, but I wrote down 12 barriers that me and Sean McGinty had a conversation about some time ago that are facing women. So just in case, just to give some more meat on the bones for us today, the historical context is number one. Women were forbidden for pursuing careers for a long time, weren't we? We were stuck in the kitchen, basically. And we're still fighting against that these days. The motherhood penalty. We are the primary caregiver, whatever happens. The last time I was on a panel talking about women in music, the person who was chairing the panel in my position actually had her son on her knee because the childcare had let her down. So it's that kind of situation that's holding us back constantly. We are primary caregivers wherever. Unsociable hours, obviously the music industry, a lot of the stuff we're doing is weekends, it's evenings, it's in the dark of nights and the early hours, and that's before you start talking about being on tour. You know, like Kyla was saying that when you're taking your child on tour, I know of artists that have asked for an extra tour bus for their family so they can take their child on tour with them and been told, no, that's too expensive. So these are all issues that we're facing. The gender pay gap is still real, it's still there, and no matter how much we shout about it, it's not getting changed, is it? Female singers as well. There seems to be this sexualisation of women in culture, as we find alongside on other levels, such as breastfeeding, etc. Not to go into that one, but yeah, we're still seen as that tokenistic person who should hold the mic, look relatively attractive and be at the forefront. This is still an issue that we've not overcome, and I'm really looking forward to getting into this kind of conversation about what we can do about this. Technophobia, which obviously does not affect Yvonne. There's still a lot of women going, right, okay, how do I record myself? How do I get myself set up at home? Going on to courses, I know we did a documentary where Ray Morris said she turned up and she was the only woman in the room on the course to learn about production. And that is still a really big thing. And there's lots of great women that are doing good stuff online, especially to kind of break these myths open a little bit more, as well as in person. But we still need to do more. Sexism and harassment. Who hasn't had an experience in that area? I'm guessing we all have, yeah? Probably? Okay, yeah, we know what that is. We don't need to talk anything more. Gendered careers, how women are still seen as being, hey, you be the organiser, you be the marketing person, you be the colour that brings the balance to the proceedings. You can't do anything heavyweight. You can't, you're not capable of doing something like that. We've all had those experiences, haven't we? Unconscious bias. I had this a few times myself where my employer just employs people like them. Not just the gender, but their ethnicity and their age and everything. Have you experienced unconscious bias? Because I think it's more rife than you probably realise. It's definitely a thing that massively affects things in the music industry. I think what's great today is that we have a panel of wonderful people that have all made different journeys into the music industry, and how they've landed at their profession has been like it's meant to be. They've just got there a certain way, but they've got there in the end. Lack of role models is a real thing, and that is why it's so important. You're hearing the stories of these wonderful women here today. Confidence. I think imposter syndrome is absolutely rife in the music industry, and it's not just women that experience this as well. I think it is. I've spoken to men that have suffered from it, and those marginalised gender as well. So I think it's something that we really need to work on to build our confidence, to know our worth, to know what we are good at, and to really run with it. And then the gender of music is the final point. What is the gender of music? I have written down a bit of information. It says, appears like the genderisation of the genres comes down to what we perceive as more masculine or feminine genres in terms of instrument, lyric, style of music, tone, attitudes and dress codes. I certainly know that there was a band from Yorkshire that did a song called R&B recently, which not quite on the gender spectrum, but she was like, I'm expected to sing with R&B, an R&B song, not a rock song, because I am of a certain ethnicity. And I think that is true of the music industry in terms of gender as well. So many issues. I'm sure there are stacks more, but I want to ask my panel today, what do you think the issues are that are facing women? Do you fancy giving us some suggestions, Yvonne?
Well, everything you've said, I'm not.
It's not working, the microphone.
Is it not?
No.
Is it not
No,
switched
we're
on?
not hearing anything from it.
No, that one is.
Do you need a microphone?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, probably because of the thing, yeah.
Being a sound engineer.
Battery low.
Right.
I know how it feels.
I'd just like to talk about female artists, singers, or even musicians, but particularly singers. Because the thing as a producer I notice time and time again is that there's so many female artists out there with, I mean generally I would imagine over 90% of their bands are male, and a large percentage of those musicians, there's just a discrepancy between the energy of the singer, of the female, of the artist, and the essence of how it's being put across, you know, with the band, with the male musicians. That's no disrespect to the musicians whatsoever. I just really feel now that I've been saying it for so many years, where are all the females on our stages? I'm not talking about singers, I'm talking about the musicians. You know, we need them as women. We need to match up the energy, because we're a completely different energy. We are completely different. And that, for me, that's one of the biggest issues that needs addressing.
I absolutely agree with you on that one. And what I found really, really interesting, I saw this wonderful all-female blues band, which is so rare. And they were from Sweden. They were all young, all in their 20s. But then I remembered that the one festival that I ever played where the whole of the bill was split 50-50, male and female. But not only the artists that were on the bill, it was also down to all the crew, everyone that was working backstage, people who were working in the bar, sound, lights, volunteers. It was all 50-50, male or female.
In Sweden?
In Sweden.
Right, let's all move to Sweden.
But I just think, you know, it's not a coincidence that that band springs from that area, because that was their local blues festival as well. And it's because they've had that example, and you know, we need so much more of that.
Yeah, we need to learn from Sweden.
We really do.
In a lot of areas of life.
Yeah.
I think there's ways that can be done. We also have, I'm just going back to some of the students that I'm working with at the moment, where they're actually, as part of their kind of final projects, they're using these kind of ideas to challenge the industry. So they're doing it in I don't think we need to do it aggressively, but it's a really important thing that we do challenge it. So we can go to local festivals, even if it's a local jazz festival or a council festival, any kind of festival, and just say, can we just remind you of the gender issues? Can we just maybe let us know how many females have you got on there? Because very often I think people don't realise it is an issue. So it's not thought about. It's not one of the things that just gets automatically presented to a festival when people are putting festivals together. So I think we can actually, especially if we're on a bill, as soon as we're on the bill, we can say, look, is there anything we can do to support getting more females onto the bill? Is there anything we can do to support getting some female engineers onto your sound desks? What can we do to support the gender gap? What can we do to support? Like the more that we ask that, and also just with female musicians, because I often forget about it. I just go to my go-tos instead of just thinking, well, hold on, if I got a support slot, who am I going to offer that to? Well, how can I, each one teach one, each one step one up, how are we going to do that? It doesn't mean that we have to do it in a way that's maybe unsupportive of anything else, but we can certainly start to have these conversations with our local festival, organisers, or anyone else.
There's obviously an organisation, I don't know if you're aware of, called Key Change, who are working really hard to try and bring about equality. Have you performed at many festivals that have had Key Change involved, Kirsty?
I wouldn't know.
Oh, really? So obviously not high profile enough to be marketing it?
No, I've heard about it, but it's never been anything that's reached out to me. I think those are often the issues, the kind of communication of these. It feels like it's not a big kind of public conversation. And it feels like the conversation is something that we can have without it being feministic or that we're antagonizing or it's an aggressive tone, because often it will come across that way. If you say, are you working with Key Change? It's like, I think very often it can be a kind of scary thing to even ask these questions in case you're off the bill again.
I can understand that. It must be, raising any issues around gender. We feel like we're going to get painted as this aggressive.
Can I just interrupt? Sorry. I've got a question for Yvonne, because I hit upon Yvonne in 2017 when I was researching about women in technology and music. And I wanted to get an all-female event together. And I kind of put it out to all the females that I knew about doing this. And there wasn't that energy there. Do you know what I mean? It was like, I don't need to stand up and be a woman. I know what I do, and I'm quite happy with that. I don't need to be in a women's group to do it. And also, Yvonne, you had this, because I remember talking to you about this all-female event, that you had something called Change the Record. And I'd just like to know a little bit more about that, because I never actually got that conversation with you about how you went about getting an all-female event together. Because everybody's like, well, why do you need to do that?
I think it's really so important to do this. I really do. I don't think it's on.
I think it is.
That one is it.
Hello.
Yeah, I just think it's so important. Primarily, it has to come from us. It has to be the women. Just do it. Just set something up. Do it in your own way. Do you know what I mean? If you by all means ask other people and ask what are they doing to help, but it's going to fall on deaf ears if it's not within the radar and just think, yeah, whatever. We have to do it for ourselves. That wasn't set up by me. Really, that was set up by Sally Ambrose at Westminster University. It was an amazing event. It really was. And I was hoping she'd do some more. She's very busy, very busy lady.
And how long ago was that?
Oh gosh, I can't even remember. It was maybe, I don't know, 2015 or something. Can't remember. Maybe sooner than that. But it was an amazing event. The energy was incredible. It was at Westminster Uni. I went to do a masterclass. I was supposed to talk for an hour, and 2.5 hours later I was still there. Could have spent a whole day with them, it was incredible and really motivating, and I knew I wanted to do more then, but even trying to, I hear you, because I've been wanting to do more. Since then, there just doesn't seem to be a lot about, but I think as women we have to be doing it for ourselves, setting these things up. I tell people who are setting bands up, have you looked around for female musicians? Because I'm not suggesting everyone just sucks. There are other musicians, but you know, women who are...
But there is that kind of almost like snobbery about it. It's like, you know, actually I'm in a band with blokes, I really like it, I don't really want to go in another thing, so I don't need to prove anything.
A lot of the problem is that, yeah, they haven't experienced what it's like.
Yeah.
You know, when I was involved with Spoken Like a True, with a group of, I think, I don't know, maybe 15 young women, each one, we got together to work towards a show at the end of the week. It was all about spoken word. I was brought in to do the music, but it ended up so much more than that. It was, you know, it was the most incredible cathartic experience for everybody involved. Some of the girls came, they thought it was going to be, it's very competitive, you know, but they ended up leaving completely different people. It was so cathartic. It's telling the life story through word, you know, stuck together. Sophie Willan was one of those girls who came, and she was so lacking in confidence. Oh, no, you know, she just won awards. It's
interesting to say that you feel that women have got this, you know, a different energy to men.
Yeah.
And it is that.
It was unleashed at these
Yeah.
events. You know, they both lasted for a week each, and it was completely unleashed. So we have to create it, we have to come together, and we have to do it. It was exclusively female, you know, because it does make a difference. The confidence and what comes out of.
I mean, you're singers, aren't you, most of them? And how many times have you been like doing a sound check and everything, and you know, you're relying on the bloke and to tell you what you sound like.
It's
and they're just kind of
96% of the time.
Yeah, but do you know what I mean? It's like, hold on, can I get someone else? Can I get another meal over there? Because I don't like what you're doing, but you can't argue that. You know, I want to have more women in that sort of industry. It'd be lovely.
Especially in sound, like you said, there isn't enough people behind the scenes kind of doing the tour managing, you know, playing behind the scenes in the bands as well. Do you think it's a network issue that people just aren't aware of who's out there making music, or women aren't shouting about their talents enough, or maybe it's just off-putting?
I think it starts with community. It starts with community, doesn't it? And you know, events like this is definitely a great first stepping stone. I can definitely put you in the direction of a female-orientated directory that was put together by Vic Bain called the F List. Basically, an online directory. You can go on there for free and just list what you do. And it's kind of like your online profile, and it's a great way to kind of just scour through musicians or people working within the industry in your local area and connecting on that level. But yeah, I think it is. Everything starts with community. We didn't have this kind of community, I would say, like 10 years ago when I started out at university. Like, the resources we had was just a very outdated kind of syllabus of stuff, and no entry or advice, really, practical advice on how to connect or network within the music industry. It took just initiative to kind of do that on your own, and as a woman it's incredibly difficult, and you do get sidelined even in scenarios where it's a simple networking conversation of you and another person. I can't tell you how many times I felt like the person in front of me didn't want to speak to me because they didn't want to speak to the artist, or they didn't want to speak to me because I was a woman. It's a very kind of, it's always felt quite toxic and not as straightforward as a lot of my male friends would have found it back then, I think. But the positive thing to take from it is that we're not where we were like 10 years ago. There's still an awful lot of work to do. Another great resource I've been pointing towards are the FAC, which is a non-for-profit organisation, a community of artists for artists, and not just female, everyone, and they have some fantastic resources, partnerships with, I think the most recent is SoundCloud, opportunities. For example, they have a virtual hang meetup that I've just mentioned, where it's an all-female just chat conversation where you can sign up and learn about different people's stories, and you know, chime in and share yours, and also ask any questions as well. So those are two resources I kind of put on the table for being active within that community. I think is a really important thing. But there is a huge knowledge gap for people starting out in the industry as to where to even find this kind of thing. So being tuned into these wonderful people here on this panel, And not being afraid to ask questions as well is a great starting point, I'd say.
You're so knowledgeable, like on tech stuff, streaming for so many years. I mean, it's been a steep learning curve for so many artists over the last few years. Where did you start to kind of, formulate your ideas for learning about tech and how you could use it and harness it to help your music career?
I mean, when I was at uni, I was a huge technophobe. I did find myself behind the odd mixing desk, mostly because I wanted to connect with local artists, and back then I was like, okay, I know I want to perform locally and drive up that network, but it meant that I was putting on these showcases, getting behind the mixing desk and kind of learning and tinkering away and probably doing a very bad job at it. But from a tech point of view, I've seen it as a way to stand out from the crowd, because that overlap of women in tech, women in music wasn't really evident to me, like when live streaming became a thing to me in 2014. And I guess I just saw an opportunity to kind of shine there and be one of the first women to put the flag on the ground and say, like, okay, this is possible, this is what you can do. Some kind of, I guess, examples of what we've done in the past. We created, I think I was one of the very first artists to create an Amazon Alexa skill to get a kind of interaction from the fans in that sense. So imagine, I'm always really cautious about saying the word Alexa in case I set anything up. I'll usually say it on a live stream and like 100 people will be like, shut up, oh my god, my robots are going crazy. But yeah, so that, for example, the Amazon Alexa skill was another way to connect the audience to the music, and there would be like a daily songwriting tip and different things like that. Another thing we've done within the world of tech, bolted onto the music, is like a virtual reality 180 music video. So we'd have a standard music video and then exactly the same music video, but a virtual reality 180, so they could see all these weird and wonderful happenings that were happening off the side of the set. And then the more recent kind of project we've started, which is the virtual production side of things. If you asked me 10 years ago how to do any of those things, I would not have a clue. It would be way over my head. But really, I think the way I got into it was I just dug my heels in because I knew I had to, and I saw it as an opportunity really, and as frustrating as it can be, it can open so many different doors. During COVID, I found myself mentoring a lot of artists within the live streaming realm and trying to help them make that transition for that small period of time from stage to all of a sudden being very isolated in front of the lens of a camera. It's not for everybody, and there is definitely some resistance in that. And there is also such a steep learning curve when it comes to live streaming. So I can totally help you out with YouTube isn't my platform. So yeah, there's a huge learning curve, but I think taking it in your stride and
Say Alexa again.
taking it in your stride and just being willing to kind of learn and making use of the resources online, because there are a multitude of online free resources to learn any type of software out there. That's how I've done it. I mean, I didn't really study anything tech. I studied music composition, so it's almost kind of been a very independent learning thing along the way.
It can almost be a bit overwhelmed though, can't it? It's like, where do I start? Where do I look? I know that, I decided to pick up a bit more of YouTube, like video editing skills, and dived into a load of tutorials on YouTube over lockdown, because we were stuck inside anyway. But I found a couple of really good producers online actually. There's one in Leeds called York, called LNA. She's really great. She breaks down like the electronic production side of making music through kit that you could have access to at home. So there are people there. Sometimes it's just like searching out certain areas. Is it hard to just sift through and find good people that are knowledgeable, or does it take no time at all?
It's one of those things. It's like, I think we're at a point now where you can type pretty much anything into YouTube and find some form of tutorial. It's about sifting through and finding the good stuff, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, if you guys have any questions around particular software and resources, you can come and talk to me afterwards and I'll try and help and give you some advice. There's a lot out there.
We did start talking about barriers, didn't we, before we went down the rabbit hole, and I'm loving down the rabbit hole, by the way. I'm learning as much as everybody else here, I'm sure of it. But have you found, you mentioned that you'd had some, attended some meetings where you just felt resistance straight away, almost like because you're just a woman. How did you overcome it? Have you got any tips, any skills that you kind of fought back or won them over with?
And for me, it was just assertiveness, and it took me a while to get there. And the way I learned that was actually at university, because there was only 10 of us in the class, and I was the only woman. And my, not all of my lecturers, but one lecturer in particular was not very forthcoming in terms of just hearing. It felt like hearing, my side of anything. So I kind of cut my teeth in that sense, just being assertive with that person, and thinking to myself, no, wait, you're paying to be at university, you've got to let this person know, so that definitely carried across into a more professional kind of environment where I became less afraid to ask the questions, and almost to the point where I was less aware that, or conscious that I was the woman in the room. It got to the point where I didn't even think about it, I would just say what I needed to say. Because that's the point we all need to be at, but unfortunately we don't all have that from the get-go, and it's so difficult. But just know that you should be assertive. Just be assertive, be yourself. Ask as many questions as you need to, and if there's a question that isn't answered, then you've got to circle back and kind of just make yourself heard in every instance, really.
Yeah, so important. I mean, Claire, you've had quite the journey talking us through your career there, where you started out and you maybe weren't as diligent as you should be, but now it sounds like you're really on it. Have you found like your change in almost like the seriousness that you take your circumstances as kind of reap the rewards for your career?
I always feel if you speak your truth, there's nothing that kind of cuts better than that. But rather than over-talking situations where I'd just be like, I just sit back and say something and just go, yeah. And, the message gets across, but I have been accused, because I am a peacock, I'm from Wigan, I'm like, whoa, check us out. And on every level, whoever I work with, you'll always remember me, you probably hear me before you see me. That's what I always say to all my students. But I just think, for any young person coming up, just be you, just be honest, just be confident, and, don't take no for an answer as well. Like if someone says, oh, you can't do that, and you go, really? I mean, I was told by my history teacher at school, you'll end up on a council estate with about 20 kids. I could just see it. And I said, do you think so? She said, oh, I know it. I know what Caesar was like, okay. Years later, I was performing at this event, and she didn't recognise me because I was all suited and booted with all the gear, and I was walking past her and I said, oh, hi, how you doing? And she looked at me and she said, oh, it's you? And I said, yeah, I'm performing. She was like, you're a professional. I said, yeah, I'm a professional singer, and I have 2 degrees, and I'm going in for my doctorate, and yeah. I think I've got the deputy head job at your place, so I'll see you on Monday. But I just wanted to say that, to see what she said. I kept waving it like that, all the way through the year.
Okay, all of us have probably got stories like this. I was told I talk too much. I present for a living now. You definitely had it nailed, but you never see that as a positive thing to say to somebody, though. As a woman, it's always like you're aggressive rather than being assertive.
Bipolar, I've been called.
Who called you bipolar and why?
I don't really want to name any names, but it's because I just wanted something doing in a certain way, and asked, how do I do it? And didn't know, and I said, well, can we do it this way? Oh, you're being a bit bipolar with that. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to respond to that. I'm going to leave a little bit of space to scream internally, and then ask for it again. And I got what I needed for the conversation, but I thought if I said that to a man or a senior member or an artist, I'm sure that the response would have been a lot different to what I did. But you've got to work on yourself all the time. If you give yourself self-compassion, you just everything changes, and you always get good results from that.
What are the main barriers that you've experienced, Claire?
The barriers that I now face is that I'm a woman at a certain age, so I'm starting to get overlooked for younger people, for gigs and for work.
Invisible when you're over 30?
Yeah. And I had a friend when I was a kid, when I was in my 20s, and she was a professional opera singer. And she'd been all over the world, and she was from Arsenal. She was like, alright. She talked like that, she was brilliant. And she said, do me a favour, when you, go through your career now, get a degree, get smarter and smarter and smarter, because as you get older, going through the decades, you become invisible, and it doesn't matter what you do, you become invisible.
And a lot of chat with Kirsty on this in a minute.
There was a thing in the fast show where a woman ended up walking past these builders, and a young woman walks past about 18 and going, whoa, like this, and this older woman walks past and no one does anything. And she ends up taking all the clothes and becoming topless, and they go, whoa, and she goes, still got it. Do we have to do that? Do we have to do that? Can't we just have conversations and make everybody feel part of the group?
No, absolutely agree. I think ageism is another issue that I'm fighting against in my world at the moment as well. Like, you do become invisible, or people are like, what are you going to do though when you get to a certain age? Well, my ears don't stop working. I'm a music journalist, But it's not something that I believe is talked about as much as women in music is talked about at the moment. So when you've got a couple of those things knocking on the door for you, it does make things quite difficult. I mean,
it's doing that though, isn't it? It's having to take your clothes off, or in that scenario, to get a result.
I'm ready.
And that's what we've got to do. So if you want something bad enough, you go for it. I mean, I'm 57 and I'm writing my own songs in a kind of, in a very strange way, because it's just all verbal and it's non-verbal as well. You can understand that. But to do something, to do something that represents me, and I've got to really, obviously, you can imagine, can't you? Really kind of try to push this. And then there's often a time I'll just sit there thinking, what am I doing? I should be sorting out the grandchildren.
Yeah, of course, but I mean, I just wanted to say, to me it seems, if a guy reinvents himself and releases music, it's okay, nobody questions the age. However, if it's a woman, there definitely is more of a focus on like, I don't understand why there's this disparity when it comes to age. And same with newsreaders and the ilk as well, isn't it? People on TV get it even worse.
It's a patriarchal society. It's not, it's women that have bought into that over the years, and I've accepted it, and I have to stop accepting it. Again, it comes back on us, how we deal with it. Our voices need to be heard, because if we don't agree with it and we don't want to play that game, then it doesn't get played, does it? Do you know what I mean? I know it sounds very simplistic, but that's bottom line for me. I feel in my career, I feel like I've been very charmed in a way, because I started off, as you heard, an inadvertent sound engineer with my crew of guys who thought I was amazing, and we toured for a couple of years before I moved on to the next thing. And I hadn't really, because I was self-taught, because I hadn't realised what was out there in the world. So as soon as I went out there in the world, and there was this, I was getting straight away at festivals, I was getting, well, do you know how to use a mixing desk? Because there just weren't any other women about, things like that. You got elbowed in the face by one of them because, trying to be one of the lads, which was a big wake-up call for me. And it wasn't until I thought, do you know what, I am just going to be me. Like Claire said, I'm just going to be me. I'm going to wear a dress if I want to behind a mixing desk. I'm just going to be me, because I know the reason I say I was charmed is because I'd learnt my craft by then very quickly, just being in our own little group. And I was accepted by them, I was accepted by their fan base. The woman who did the sound, and it sounds great, we could hear what he's thinking. So when I went out there into this hostile world, of do you know how to use a mixing desk? Oh, you don't do that with a graphic equaliser, you know. And I just said, well, does it sound all right? I just realised I had my confidence already. I knew I was good at what I was doing, but I realised it wasn't like that for many after that. Hopefully it's getting better now, I don't know. I know quite a lot of fantastic female live sound engineers now, they're great.
So change is happening, just not quick enough.
Well, yeah, I don't think it did happen quickly enough back in those days. I'd walk into a venue and get, so you're the singer in the band then? No disrespect to singers, but obviously there's a lot of singers on our female singers on our stages, but there were no female sound engineers.
We've only got half a minute left, but I'm keen that Kirsty wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say that so I had a major label a long time ago. And when I was in the major label, I sat with my A&R person who said, we were just having a glass of wine, chatting away, and he said, Kirsty, you're really wise. How old are you? And I just signed, I think I was like, I'd maybe been with him about a year. So I said, I'm 33. And he said, oh God, if we'd have known, we wouldn't have signed you. So I was like, what? What? Stop press. Why? And he said, oh, because females over the age of 30 just don't produce as much because you want babies. So then, so there was loads of that. And there was also like a photo shoot where I arrived and there was a bed in the middle of the room. And I was like, is that in case I get tired? And they were like, no, we just thought we'd dye your hair, put this silk negligee on you, and you could lie on the bed for your photo shoot. And I was like, for my music. So I said, I'll only do it if you get a live chicken. So they brought in a live chicken, and the live chicken was there, and I was starting to, and then, suddenly it got completely different, but I just had a laugh with it, because it was like, what are we going to do with this? And then, but then kind of 2 years later, and I've had my child, and there was postnatal depression, and there was all sorts of stuff. And at the time, because I have an ex-partner who also does music, he got the music career. And I looked after the baby. So even though it was like, weekends were his, and all that continued, and I lost a lot of confidence. But what I realized was, if you look up women who've made it over the age of 70, there are so many, and there are so many women who've done awesome things over the age of 70. So that kind of gave me confidence. I just started looking at women over 70 who've had their first book or Nobel Prize or whatever it is, and then they became my idols, which meant then my next project was easy to do. Making my next album was easier. So I think we just have to, as women, have a laugh with it. Find other women that we can totally support. And if you can't put on a female event, go to a female event and support that. If we can't be the curators, then we have to support the ones who are doing it. And when we can't do that, then we have to look at the ones who've already done it. And that's
absolutely perfectly nailed on. What can we do to help? What can we do to make a difference? Is there anything out there that you think we should get involved with, that we can do or we can share or shout about to help and support women in music?
I think number one is we have to be ourselves. So when we feel like something isn't quite right, like I've just been going through a whole bunch of stuff at work that didn't feel right, we have to pull someone else in and go, is this okay? And another woman will often go, no, that's not okay. And then you go, well, could you support me to make sure that I can make change? And so that's the first thing. When we can't be ourselves, we have to find a way to be ourselves. And then I think maybe losing, feeling into things, like Yvonne says, we have such a different type of energy. But supporting the women who are already here, who have a dream, go support some other woman's dream. And if you have a dream, then pull in 5 women that you know and say, would you support my dream?
I think we could honestly sit here and talk for probably another 3 hours, but we're running out of time. So quickly, the panel, if you have one thing that you could suggest that we could do to make a difference and help women in music, what would it be?
I think that we should be most definitely supporting music in schools and making it accessible for teenage girls, make it cool somehow, because it seems such a teenage boy thing, you know. Like I said, my daughter who's nearly 13, she's playing guitar, but none of her friends are interested in music, so it's difficult for her to carve her own path. And you know, if you're not confident enough, like say, if you're not confident in being yourself, it does always start with doing what feels good to you. But I think we really need to support music right from that young age, and certainly girls in music.
Wales have made a big change this week, which
They
is
have.
incredible for children.
It's amazing,
Music.
yeah.
So
Definitely.
if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll shout about it afterwards. I don't want to take any more time. But of course, Kirsty, I think you just put something great out there already. I think it's so right to be authentically yourself. Whatever anybody else tells you, be authentically you. Don't try and change to fit anymore. It's really important. Okay, let's go to Claire. Have you got a suggestion for
I
us?
would love to see some kind of yearly festival that celebrates women, whether that is kind of written into an existing festival, or kind of like a special day that they have. You know, like Joe Wicks is talking about mental health with his parents now, and we could kind of celebrate all artisan women and encourage young people, mothers, you know, aunties, just women to get involved and just support each other through music, through the arts.
A place to come together,
Yeah.
perform, enjoy each other's music. And
Brilliant, let's just set it up. We've got the panel, let's and then everyone else can be involved. I reckon we could do it straight after this.
let's talk about it. Let's keep the conversation going. Emma, what about you?
It starts with you as an individual. Lift other women up in your community, also be a part of that community. Go check out the F list. Sign yourself up there and let people know what you do in music. And go and check out the FAC as well. They have some fantastic resources, really great female-focused virtual meet coming up in June, I think. Just continue to be a voice, because if you do it, then it's a knock-on effect, isn't it? Everybody else around you will see you and want to kind of share their voice too.
Yeah, representation right there. And Yvonne?
Just be aware that we bring the best out of ourselves when we're in groups of other women to build up confidence and to be ourselves, be our authentic selves. And if there's women around you and you can use, whether it be a producer, an engineer, a tour manager, a musician, you know, don't knock them down. There are two kinds of women. I've noticed in my long career there's two kinds of women in this business. There are those who are busy trying to be the men, and there seems to be a lot of envy around and they don't want you to do well. And there are those women who are extremely supportive of the women. You know, decide which type you want to be.
The latter, please. I've worked with a number of performers.
Yeah.
It's not an enjoyable experience because
It's really
I
nice.
feel like it's because there's so few women in different pockets of the industry that you're automatically pitched against each other. And generally it's by men. I hate to say it, but it is. So yeah, that's really, really powerful. Can you put your hands together for our wonderful